Ladies, all right. So as you know, most of you know that I've recently gone through a divorce. So I have a couple of questions for you because I'm trying to check in to see if I'm the only woman feeling this way after a breakup. Have you ever gone through a breakup and it made you feel like you were left alone? Have you ever gone through a breakup and had to watch that person move on before you? Well, we're gonna get into that in this episode, but I want y'all to stay tuned because it's gonna be super impactful and the conversation is gonna hit home for most of us. So stay tuned.
Is the heart searching free? Rediscovering me. I want you to get through this. Real life conversations, we gotta get straight to this. Is the heart searching free? Rediscovering me. I want you to get through this. Real life conversations, we gotta get straight to this.
Welcome to the Heart Surgery Podcast. We are going into another episode. I'm your host, Shanique Keene, the Soft Girl Specialist, and on this show we have real life, heart-to-heart conversations. So if you are someone looking to rediscover a new version of you, please stay tuned because we have an amazing word to get out to women all over the world, just like you and I. Whew. It's been a journey, but welcome to 2026 and welcome to the messy middle. That is where I currently am. Today we are going to talk a little bit about healing while hurting. And as you know, I am right in the middle of that. Going through this divorce, end of my marriage has been a journey. Most people don't know because I don't speak about it much. But it's been pretty scary. And most people don't talk about what we call the messy middle. And the messy middle is just a phase or a space that I'm currently in where everything seems like it's in disarray. And I want to speak to that because this is something that most women are super embarrassed to talk about. Nobody wants to face the fact that they're starting all over and having to rebuild. And most of all, we're super embarrassed about it. So it's everything that women feel, but it's everything that we don't want to discuss. Number one, because we feel like we're alone in this journey. So let's get into this real quick. It's going to be super, super good. As a woman, we have this thing that we call the silent battle. And in the silent battle, again, most people don't know what you're dealing with. Most people don't know what I deal with when I go home, when I'm working, when I'm raising my kids, when I'm having long nights by myself, restless, can't sleep. But everybody sees me on social media smiling and just living my day-to-day life, right? Well, the silent battle is about the truth that people don't see. So I'm going to get into this, and I have a couple of questions for you that I'm going to throw out there because these are the things that I've experienced. These are the things that I think about and I've thought about through this journey. And it's pretty difficult because these are the things that I don't want to share with nobody, but I'm on camera sharing it with you. So one of the major things that stuck out to me when I was going through my divorce and as I'm still healing and hurting and dealing with all the whiplash of the whole process is watching someone you once loved move on like nothing ever happened. We know that going through the healing stage, it feels 10 times harder when you're doing it alone. And that's exactly what it feels like. You were in this marriage, you were in this relationship, and then all of a sudden it ends, and then the person just goes on like it never meant nothing. Now they're moved on with another person, and through that phase, you have to watch that. Nobody talks about that. Nobody talks about the internal conflict that we have on a daily basis within ourselves. Who can we talk to ask these questions or to vent to? Because most of the time, when you're going through such a situation, people are super judgmental, right? I know for me, there were many times where I had to cry to myself and I couldn't go to a friend or someone close to me to cry because it's like, why are you crying over that? You know, due to my situation on why I got divorced, why are you crying over him? Why are you crying over that? You know, people think you're stupid. People think you're less confident. People think you don't have self-esteem. But it has nothing to do with that. In the moment, it kind of feels like you're grieving or you're experiencing a loss. So the internal conflict that I dealt with and sometimes still deal with, knowing good and well, I don't want them back, right? I mean, we know that we don't want them back, but in the back of our minds, it's still a game, a mental game that we play. When people know who you are, and when you've been with somebody for so long, they know exactly what buttons to push to get you to a space that you no longer want to revisit. So then the question comes in, why is this triggering me? Why is this person doing X, Y, and Z to trigger me? And we fail to realize that sometimes the person that we were with knows us better than we know ourselves. So they know exactly what to do to trigger you. This is the point where you have to tap into yourself and rediscover yourself to figure out what you want moving forward. So a lot of times we think about leaving a relationship and we think about moving on, right? But I had a conversation this week and it dawned on me that I don't want to move on. I want to move forward. And that is something, a message that I want to send to y'all, because a lot of times when we're in these relationships, we're thinking that we want to move on. But when we move on, we're not changing anything. We're actually finding the same person in a different body. But when we move forward, we're actually forcing ourselves to change, to grow, and to make better decisions in the future. Another experience that I've encountered is the identity clash. This right here is a little difficult to talk about because I'm going to get real vulnerable with y'all as a woman. And a part of me don't want to go here, but I'm going to go here. I talked about watching your spouse or your ex-spouse move on before you do. And that is something that in the beginning of my divorce that I struggled with. And in this moment, it feels like the pain gets deeper. And it's more of an emotional shift, an emotional and a psychological shift. And I feel that way because when you have a union and then you have someone else to come into that union and destroy it, you kind of feel like, why did I work this hard for it all to fail? So not only are you thinking about yourself and the man, right? Now you start to question yourself as a woman because now you're comparing yourself to another woman. How can another woman trigger how I feel about myself? Her existence should not make me think less than of myself. It shouldn't make me feel like I'm decreasing my value as a woman. And a lot of times we don't want to talk about these things because we are too prideful. But I know I'm not the only one in the room that has compared herself to another woman. What is she doing better than me? Why her? Right? We've all been there. Then you have the feeling of being replaced. And then it becomes this comparison versus confident internal struggle. And I believe that's where a lot of women get stuck, right here. Because instead of us trying to move on and get our lives together, we're too focused on what could have been. We're too focused on the past. We're too focused on the new woman. And then all of that gets in our head and then we're stuck. So this is one of the whole points of this podcast, is to not get stuck and move forward, because we're trying to move from victim to victory, right? So when you see the situation play out in front of you, you start to question who you are now, right? You start to question, am I ever going to be enough? You start to feel like I was a wife, but now I'm nobody, right? But I had to realize that my entire identity was not in being a wife, right? Just like my entire identity is not all about being a mom. So the place that I'm in now is kind of, it's difficult. It's difficult because I'm learning myself all over again, just as an individual, not mommy, not sister, not daughter, not wife, just a woman. And so I'm rebuilding my life as Shanique, the woman. And at this point, I know where I've come from, right? And I know where I want to be and where I want to go. But I don't know what that completely looks like. And I'm still trying to figure that out. And I know I'm not alone. So that's why I'm on this camera, because I want to share not just my story, but my journey of where I am. And that's going to be a part of this podcast. It's not just going to be episodes. It's going to be my current state and where I am. I feel like some things you got to go through by yourself. You know, we have support systems and we have family and friends, but in the space that I'm in right now, I've been pretty isolated. And they say isolation isn't good, but I truly believe that sometimes it's needed, especially in this place, because a lot of people don't realize that you can heal and hurt at the same time. And it makes it a little difficult for me because I'm so used to being in a relationship. And sometimes I have to tell myself, Shanique, it is okay that you are not in a relationship. And I didn't realize how important that was because in the space that I'm in right now, I don't need to be in a relationship. Simply because this is the time that I need to work on myself and actually do the self-work. A lot of times we say that, I'm going to therapy and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. But how are we really doing the self-work? And I find myself sometimes caught in a web. It feels like I'm caught in a web because I'm really having to figure this out on my own. And it can get really tough. I spoke on my story this week and I talked about the lack thereof when it pertains to a parent, or specifically me, my dad. And I bring this up because we don't realize, I know I didn't realize until I became a full-grown adult, how much I missed when it pertains to having a strong relationship, emotional, mental, connection with my dad. And I bring that up because now that I'm actually doing the self-work and not leaving one relationship and going to the next, I'm really having to dig deep to figure out where are certain things coming from. And what I come to realize is it's the lack of emotional support and safety that I did not receive as a little girl. And I didn't realize how important that was until like this year, and I'm 40. I've always been a leader. I've always been independent. So I don't think that really bothered me in my younger days. But now that I'm actually by myself and having to figure this out, is making me tap into every aspect of my life. And that is what I've discovered this week. So when I tell you that I'm sharing with you, literally, as I'm going through my journey, like I'm for real, I'm sharing with y'all as I'm going through my journey. Every day is different. But through it all, as we're rebuilding brick by brick, because that's exactly what it feels like. It feels like I'm alone most of the time. And sometimes I question God and say, like, you didn't create us to be this way, right? He created us to be together, man and woman, right? But sometimes in life, we have to have these journeys where we're set apart to rebuild alone. And through this rebuilding phase, I feel like I'm behind. And as I walked by somebody, I think it may have been in church recently, someone said to me that they feel like they're behind. And it hit a nerve, because that's exactly how I feel. Sometimes I feel like I've wasted time. Sometimes I feel like I'm 40 and I'm not supposed to be here. Sometimes I feel like, why me, right? But I know why I'm here. Because there's something that I have to get out to y'all. There's something that I need to solve within myself so that I am able to make better decisions moving forward, personally. So the rebuilding phase looks more like choosing yourself, even when your heart is still trembling, even when you don't know what direction to go, even when you are unsure, even when you are talking to God and you don't even know what to say to him. But all I can say in this is keep the faith, keep the hope, and know that you are not alone and you are not behind. Your journey is just beginning, just like mine. We also need to understand that healing is not a competition. It is a journey that you have to take on your own and do it at your own pace. You also have to stop looking at other people and what they're doing. Social media, your ex, their new relationship. It takes small steps, but quiet steps, in order for you to rebuild emotionally, mentally, spiritually, physically, financially. Whew, that's a big one. As an individual, a mother, whoever you are. It takes great strength and courage to be where I am today. And this week I had to actually give myself a pat on the back, because sometimes you're just so focused on the end result that you don't give yourself enough credit along the way. And this week I gave myself credit for the journey. You got to focus on growth and not the past. You got to focus on your future and not where you once were. You have to focus on truly where you want to be. You know, you need to focus on what you want to feel, FILL, and what you're trying to feel, FEEL. I think those two things are super important, because when we're missing things that we haven't gained as an adult, we look for in other people. And sometimes that's validation, security. It's all kind of things. And when we do that, we miss what we were supposed to get out of the entire lesson, because we're seeking and we're searching in other people what we should be seeking and searching in ourselves. So with all that I said within this episode, I want to leave y'all with some hope, because I think that most women are ashamed. There's many of you that have reached out to me and are ashamed about where you are in your personal life, in your relationship. And there's nothing to be ashamed about. Because if I put 20 women in a room, 5 women in a room, and we all start sharing our story, you will be shocked about the women that have gone through much worse than you can ever imagine. And it's not to put no one's situation higher than the other, but we got to remember that we're not the only ones. And we also have to remember that we're not alone. There's a world full of women that are waiting to support you through your journey if you just open up your mouth and tell us exactly what you need and where you're hurting. Because somebody has been through what you're currently going through. I'm going through what you're currently going through. And a part of my healing journey is doing this. Because last year, talking like I'm talking now, I would have been started crying, y'all. Because I'm a big crybaby. But I'm able to speak without crying. And that's growth for me. So my goal in this episode here is to leave you with hope, not heaviness. Right? To leave you with empowerment, not resentment. Because we're working on moving forward. We're not thinking about the past, right? We're not staying there. And most important, clarity and not confusion. Whew, that was heavy. I'm sorry, y'all. That was a lot. But I'm happy I got it out. And this is my therapy. But what I'm going to do right now is jump into a couple of questions that I want to leave y'all with. How do I forgive myself for what I tolerated, ignored, or made excuses for? I think the main thing in that question that stands out to me is the made excuses for part. And I say that because we can't forgive ourselves if we are still holding on. We can't forgive ourselves if we are still making excuses and not holding ourselves accountable. So the first thing that comes to my mind with that question is you got to forgive yourself by first acknowledging where you are. You always need to start at the base point of the problem. Once you acknowledge where you are, you need to sit in it, deal with it, and not run from it. Because forgiveness is, they talk about forgiveness when it pertains to another person, right? But forgiveness is all about you. If you cannot forgive yourself, you are going to move on and move forward making the same mistakes. So we cannot have pity for ourselves, and we have to take self-accountability. How do I step into my soft girl era without feeling weak, scared, or like I'm setting myself up to be hurt again. Oh my gosh. I don't know if I should be the one to answer this question. This is something that I'm actually still working through this here. I've always been the independent one. I've always been the leader in my relationships. So I am actively learning how to be a soft girl. And it is a work in progress every day. But I think one of the first steps to that is making sure that you are taking the steps to properly heal. Because no matter who comes into your life, they can wait on you hand and foot, treat you like the queen that you are, and you will mess it up because you are still hurting and you're looking to that person to fill every void. So I'm gonna backtrack a little bit because you can't even get to the soft girl era if you're not healed. And quite honestly, you shouldn't even be trying to get there until you get over what you're going through and until you do the self-work. That's my answer to that. There's a couple of things that I have on my heart that I wanted to share. I'm going to give you three simple steps on how to heal while hurting. 1, give your pain a job. Let it be your teacher, but do not let it paralyze you. 2, take small steps, not big leaps. Focus on the tiny wins and make sure you celebrate everything. 3, build a safe place while your heart is still hurting. That means protect your peace with strong boundaries. That's what I want to leave y'all with today. So, thank you so much for tuning in to another amazing episode of the Heart Surgery Podcast. Please make sure that you subscribe to my YouTube channel, the Heart Surgery Podcast on YouTube. Please make sure that you are sharing with your community, men and women. I thank you so much. I'm super excited to be delivering such another episode, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. I'll see y'all later. Bye.